one more question. In your opinion, of all Hollywood movies, which has the best script of all time? If your answer happens to be an older classic movie, please also include one from the last 20 years. Well, the question of what is the best of anything is a question I never answer. There's never one best. There are always, so many different genres and different types of movies and things like that. What's the best sleazy, cheapo movie ever made? What's the best classy, intelligent movie ever made? What's the best comedy, drama, science fiction? And even then, it just gets parsed down. But there are endless great scripts. If you're looking for great scripts, you should look at all the films of Billy Wilder. Well, not all of them, but through the 40s and the 50s certainly, and all the scripts of Preston Sturges. There once was a time when Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was considered to be the most amazing script of all time, but I think that was because it was the first giant spec sale where he wrote it without anyone paying him for it, and then there was a bidding war, and he sold it for what in the 60s was an ungodly amount of money, and then he wrote a big long book about how to be a screenwriter. I'm talking about William Goldman, and he talked at length about how he had written Butch Cassidy. So that's an interesting script and an interesting book. In fact, I'm looking right at it. It's over the camera. Adventures in the Screen Trade by William Goldman. It's an interesting book about a movie I don't personally care that much for, but at one time it was considered to be, if not certainly not the greatest film ever made, but a terrific example of the screenwriting art. And then for a very long time, Chinatown was considered to be like the greatest script ever. But again, in the case of Chinatown, from what I have read and from what I've read, that was a script that benefited immensely from the collaboration with the director, Roman Polanski. Robert Towne's original script was all over the place. Polanski helped him bring it together and, in fact, imposed a dark ending on it that Robert Towne didn't want. That's a great movie if you've never seen it, Chinatown. Scripts to me are about the movies that get made from them rather than the scripts themselves. To me, screenwriting is not the same sort of thing as writing a novel or anything like that. It's an interim step, and the only reason you divide screenwriting from directing is that the skill sets tend to get divided up. In most cases, there are people who have the skill sets to be a director but not to be a writer, and writers who don't have what it takes to be a director. But in terms of the job itself of making a movie, I sort of feel like writing and directing are, essentially the same job, and the movies tend to be best when either it's a writer-director who makes them, or the writer and the director just are really successful at collaborating with each other. So, but you said something in the past 20 years. Well, I am an old fart, and things just ain't as good as they used to be. But I really loved, and don't laugh, Shakespeare in Love. I think that's a great film, a terrific film. There are only two things that I basically sort of dislike about it. I'm not that fond of the photography, and I wish that Philip Marlowe, Christopher Marlowe, instead of being played by that hulking gay guy, I've forgotten his name, Rupert Everett. Rupert Everett? Maybe I'm even forgetting that. Christopher Marlowe should have been played by Jude Law, because Marlowe should have looked younger than Shakespeare and better looking, and just in every way, someone for Shakespeare to be jealous of. Whereas Everett played him as like this depressive guy on the skids. Anyhow, boy, I really went off track there, didn't I? But the reason I bring that film up is that I thought that was a brilliant example of screenwriting, and also of the realities of screenwriting, because it was two writers of very different sensibilities who ended up, one rewriting the other, and ended up creating something that was probably better than either one of them could have done on their own. The script for Shakespeare in Love, and also in that case, the script is plainly like essential to how well the movie turned out, even though everybody rose to the challenge of how good it was. So there. Okay, where am I? Dantaeos. Have you ever seen the movie The Crow, and did you like it? Now, I ran through these questions really quickly before, and I've forgotten most of them, but it gave me the chance to do a little research. I don't do reviews here. However, years ago in my journal, I used to comment on all the movies that I saw, and in fact, I did in the case of The Crow, and I couldn't remember what I said except that I knew I didn't like it. So I went back to May 11th, 1994, and I'm going to read this because it's like historical. I don't know. Anyway, and so in 1994 I was 36, but as we will see, I was already a curmudgeon. I went up to Hollywood and saw it at the Grauman's Chinese Theater. Famous Grauman's Chinese Theater. I don't know how many people really understand how famous Grauman's Chinese Theater is these days. Anyway, May 11th, 1994. There were picketers outside the Chinese carrying signs reading, "Actors' safety before producers' profits. Boycott The Crow." I slunk past them into the theater. Now, I don't know if you recall, but Brandon Lee, the star of The Crow, died on the set of The Crow before the film was finished when something went wrong with a squib in a gun. He was basically shot on the set and died of the wound. Anyway, so that's the backstory there. And what I said was, The Crow is a dud, a shrieking, crashing, cacophonous monotony. Some of the digital effects are clever, some are just grainy and tedious. Neither the writers nor the director have a clue how to evoke anything but grunge-style decadence and grating yet tedious violence. The story has the classic Halloween/Friday the 13th flaw. It's just a series of people getting killed. You know they're going to get killed, and they're all scumbags, and you don't care. And they're all scumbags you don't care about, so there's nothing of interest except how they'll get killed. It's a little late in the day to be offering up new clever ways to off people as your movie's only entertainment value. And I read this to remind myself that I could be every bit of the snarky asshole as all those people who gleefully wrote how I'm the worst screenwriter ever with Night of the Living Dead 3D. So there you go. You get philosophical as the years roll by. Brandon Lee looks like he might have become a real star, but this film is nothing to remember him by. The trade paper raves for it were obviously an overreaction to earlier reports that the film was unfinishable, and to the uncanny congruity between his death and the film's subject matter. But even the highly partisan crowd of action junkies, fans of the Crow comic book, and Brandon Lee devotees, and these barely filled the seats along the middle aisle, gave the film only lukewarm applause at the end. The Chinese Theater's auditorium, and I have to add this last bit in just for my own historical sake, my own historical interest. The Chinese Theater's auditorium seemed incredibly big on this visit, in contrast, I suppose, to all the multiplexes I patronize these days. As I wandered the lobby after the movie, I looked at the teenagers around me and wondered if they got the same thrill of old-time Hollywood glamour that I got coming to the Chinese when I was their age. They should. The place is even older and more unusual than it was in the 1970s. But today's kids, do they even care about that kind of historical comparison? Or is everything identically now to them, a cornucopia of history's styles and fashions jumbled together in no particular chronological order?